mentioned in a future newsletter. Wood also said the purpose of the UBU Club is to provide a safe, accepting space for students of the LGBT community. According to Moore, third graders are far too young to be discussing sexuality.
If you want to talk to your children about that, then that's your right. And just like it's any other parent's right to be in control of when they their kids how they do it. And the school is really and bring them to a club that involves sexual orientation, conversations, private conversations, orientation, and then people keep secrets. That's super concerning. And it's a huge red flag.
Moore says the school district has informed them that the UBU Club has been put on pause, but says parents at the school feel that their trust has already been broken. Daniel Mahan, NTD News.
Now, do we really have to pretend to be so naive here? A secret gay sex club for kids? I mean, come on. If a guy pulls up in a rusty white van that says free candy, kids, just get in the trunk, it's pretty safe to assume what's going on there. Let's not be so naive. Secret sex club for kids about LGBTQ, safe space, just pride. Can you imagine if there was a straight sex club for kids? What if the teacher decided, I'm going to take young boys and teach them about their heterosexuality, I'm going to show them what heterosexuality means? Would that be accepted? Of course not. That'd be appropriate too. Oh, it's gay pride. Oh, it's gay, so it's cool. Oh, we're going to keep secret from parents because that's just safe. That makes you feel comfortable. Well, the reason why gay rumors exist and gay rumors is an idea was, you say at the time, but the time's not right. America's support for same-sex marriage declined for the first time since 2015, according to a public religion institute survey. So most culturally conservative, politically conservative individuals kind of give up political fight when it comes to gay marriage, let's say. I mean, even there's very little pushback against a lot of the stuff that goes on, but now it's crossed such a threshold where they're doing secret LGBTQ clubs for kids and not telling the parents, and they're doing genital mutilation and chemical castration of kids and not telling the parents. So yeah, where do you think this goes? Now it reverses all those years. Oh, it was all about gay marriage. We just want to get married to our same-sex partner. Well, now you've gone too far. You've gotten the kids, and it's going to end.
It's good for your heart, your brain, everything. It is 40% off, back in stock, Body's Ultimate Turmeric Formula, InfoWarsStore.com.
Bodies, an ally in the battle against inflammation. Visit InfoWarsStore.com now and seize the opportunity to take control of your health.
What the f*** is that? Some are saying that directed energy weapons are being deployed to spark the largest fire in Texas history. And we know that these weapons exist.
This newly released footage shows the Dragonfire laser directed energy weapon system in action, and it could be in the hands of military personnel in 5 years' time. It destroys targets with an intense beam of light and has pinpoint accuracy. It's able to hit something the size of a £1 coin from a kilometer away.
The fires we have seen in recent years, including the fires in Texas, are very different from what we have seen in the past. They often selectively spare the trees while burning the infrastructure into a powdery ash footprint.
I have witnessed and observed some extraordinary damage in our state. It could be caused by hurricanes or tornadoes, and frequently when you see the aftermath of that damage, there's some semblance of a structure that is still there. When you look at the damages that have occurred here, it's just gone, completely gone. Nothing left but ashes on the ground.
After the Maui fires, many people believed that a blue roof was able to deflect these directed energy weapons and spare the home from destruction. And Joe Biden recently alluded to this twice.
If you fly over these areas that are burned to the ground, you'll see in the midst of 20 homes that are just totally destroyed, one home sitting there because it had the right roof on it. And anyway.
Yes, and by the way, if you notice you fly over in the helicopter, those places with good roofs, they didn't burn.
It's the right materials.
Yeah. So we got to change that. Anyway.
Joe Biden is clearly not a reliable source of accurate information. But why would a roof save a house from burning? And while there is plenty of circumstantial evidence that suggests directed energy weapons are being used to start these recent fires, arsonists have been arrested starting them the old-fashioned way. And there is a clear motive. The United Nations, who have been orchestrating the open border policy of America and several other countries, have openly announced plans to clear the lands of people and move them into smart cities. starting with Agenda 21, a map which shows designated off-limits to human areas lined up with the 2008 California fires. 9 years ago, planning was announced for smart cities to be built on Maui, but the most coveted property was owned by natives whose families have lived there for generations prior to Hawaii being annexed by the U.S. In August of 2023, Maui was devastated by highly suspicious fires. Roads were blocked off to keep residents from escaping, and the U.S. government gave survivors a mere $700 per household. A conference in April of 2023 met in Viña del Mar, Chile, to provide the municipality with support in the transfer of knowledge about the theory and solutions of smart cities. A year later, Viña del Mar was ravaged by fires. It was blamed on climate change, but local officials claimed arson. And in 2022, Amarillo, Texas was reported to be the #1 area under the radar for the Texas housing market under the United Nations Vision 2045. On February 26th of this year, the biggest fire of Texas broke out in this same area. Vision 2045 is the latest iteration of the United Nations plan to seize control of 90% of the land and limit people to 15-minute cities.
I'd like to think that change happens in manageable ways. It doesn't happen like that. It happens in punctuated equilibria, where we have periods of stability.
So, thanks to all of you keeping this show on over the years, we have a real fighting chance against the globalists. Thanks to all of you.
We do not warn of false flags to try to predict horrible events. We warn of false flags to try and prevent them. They are the norm for starting massive conflicts. They are based on lies, and so we only hope that the truth will make them futile. Last week, I reported on rumors that Victoria Nuland was planning a false flag attack on a Ukrainian nuclear power plant. There is now talk in Kiev that the real president of Ukraine, Victoria Nuland, has become so desperate for NATO troops to enter Ukraine and continue this U.S. proxy war against Russia that she is willing to murder innocent locals with a radioactive cloud and blame it on Russian forces.
I can guarantee you that.
Well, you guys have a good one.
Hey, appreciate that call. Hello, caller, you on the air?
Yes, Alex, how you doing?
Pretty good.
I was just kind of curious if it's true that the police can have laser or infrared beams, if you want to call it, and they can project those into your house to basically...
Yeah, the Austin Police Department's, last time I heard, has 20 units with infrared. If you have enough of a heat source in your house, it'll pick up the heat source and show a signature. It's called FLAIR. It's infrared or heat signature, and we didn't play all of the cut from the Lear's from the News Hour, a short little cut for news reasons that'll show you Lair News Hour saying, yeah, here's the black helicopters. The military has sold them to the police departments all over the country. They've got thousands of them. They've got thousands of tanks and armored personnel carriers now. And they don't say, by the way, all these people that have been kooks for 10 years telling you about it, now they're admitting they have black helicopters. It's a fact.
Mr. Jones, some of your Sandy Hook reporting. Hold on, excuse me, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, some of your reporting on Sandy Hook involved a anonymous website known as Zero Hedge. You know what Zero Hedge is?
Yes.
Okay. You'll remember that there was an affidavit submitted by one of the plaintiff's experts that said InfoWars and Zero Hedge promoted and endorsed each other's content. You remember that affidavit?
No.
Okay. You've taken issue with that statement, though. You don't believe that statement's not true?
I don't know who runs Zero Hedge. I wouldn't have a relationship with them.
Okay. I want to show you what I'm now marking as Exhibit 7. Do you want to take a minute to read this, Mr. Jones? What I've handed you is the August 28th affidavit that you executed in the Heslin case. Do you want a minute to read that?
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
I'm finished.
Okay, Mr. Jones. I'd like to direct your attention there at the end of page 1 and spilling onto page 2. I'm going to read a sentence there for you that's highlighted. States, none of the defendants ever cooperated in any way of Zero Hedge, nor have defendants and Zero Hedge ever promoted or endorsed each other's content. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and I believe the next sentence there, at times, there's been times where Zero Hedge has been cited.
Yes.
And commented about.
Yes.
Right, but to talk about you engage in the promotion or endorsement of Zero Hedge content, that was wrong. That's what this affidavit.
Yes, that's wrong. I mean, I don't know who Zero Hedge is. I've reached out to him before and said, "Hey, who are you? I'd like you to come on." And there's been no response back. I mean, I've said, "Wow, this is a good article from Zero Hedge." Like I've said to the New York Times, if it's a good story, but I don't have any relationship with them.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to show you a video of you talking about Zero Hedge. And I'm going to show you a clip that was taken on June 13, 2017. This clip, unfortunately, is not available online anymore. This is what you're about to see has been downloaded from a website called sandyhookfacts.com. So I want to show you that video, which is just a recording of your video. Can you play the clip called Zero Hedge?
It's from 0 Point Now is who posted it. This article, I need to get this person to write for InfoWars. They absolutely get where I stand. They're journalists. They actually reported on what I said. They showed my quotes going back over years saying, I don't know what happened, but it's got more holes in it than Swiss cheese. But again, I want to encourage people to read the Zero Hedge article that breaks it all down because they absolutely are on target with this report, where they ask the questions that the media seems so scared that I might even actually talk about if the Megyn Kelly interview aired.
When you said in your affidavit that InfoWars and you have never promoted or endorsed Zero Hedge's content, that was a false statement.
I just said before you played the clip that I've said they've done good reporting.
Sure, but Mr. Jones,
that's not an endorsement. I don't know who they are.
You're going to tell us that clip we just saw was not you promoting and endorsing Zero Hedge's content.
Objection is to form.
I just told you. I've said I think they do good reporting.
You think the statements that you made in that affidavit were honest, forthright, and complete?
Yes.
Okay. Honest, forthright, and complete?
Yes.
Okay. Honest, forthright, and complete?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
It can be any color that's not really common. It's not going to be on your shirt or on your tie, because then it'll make that disappear as well. And also, if there's kind of a blue hue to your nose at the event horizon point, nose is turning is generally the number one thing that disappears, or any hairs that are amiss can create a blue shimmer off of television lights, and then you'll see areas that disappear. And so that's the telltale sign, not of digital breakup, but that's in squares.
Honest, forthright, and complete?
Yes.
Okay. Honest, forthright, and complete?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anderson Cooper's, right?
I think you probably found those.
Yeah, that's something that you could produce.
I can't guarantee it, but that's pretty. Like everybody's seen like the weather person, and they're wearing the wrong color tie. And it does that. I mean,
absolutely. And so if they're wearing a blue shirt, all of a sudden it looks like their shirt's invisible, right? Because it's the same color as the blue screen, right?
Or it might be set to green and somebody sets it to blue, and or where somebody hits it and it goes to brown and all of a sudden the rest of their coat disappears.
And the whole shirt disappears because it's blue.
Yeah, there's a dial. You can dial it to any color you want.
Okay.
Or distortion in sensation.
I
see what you mean, yes. You want to experiment.
Well, I want to know whether there's any particular feeling connected with it.
It's the same distortion you get throughout the whole experience.
Such as what?
Well, lopsided. And you don't seem to be feeling it with your whole body. You seem to be feeling it with a horn-likeness. Things seem to be apexing in. I seem to be listening to myself and being you, the audience, listening to me.
What about the taste? Does it taste like the anticipated taste of a chocolate malt?
Yes, it does. All those things are so well known that there's no sense in doing them. I mean, the fact that I would never eat a hamburger again because it's so vulgar. You've had a hamburger.
What would you like to eat if you had a choice?
Well, what I would like to eat? Nothing. I have no... I feel physical again, and I think this is a bad thing.
You prefer to feel
that joy which gives me a feeling of anxiety, but at the same time...
Why does it give you a feeling of anxiety?
Because it seems to want to take me over too much, you see, and I don't want to let myself go. And I don't want to let myself go.
Do you think that it can happen? It can happen.
And here's why. I would only respect them if they were so the students knew what they were getting into. Q is a composition class. Q is a plan to save. Upper institutions. Q is a secret.
Pushing Q in the heart.
Q is
they can't even throw a fucking dollar tickets.
Yeah.
Expensive. We're gonna jump right in. You said Frederick Brennan is a software developer and the creator of 8chan. Welcome to the podcast, Frederick.
I mean, there's really not much else to it. You know, I also had another element where, due to my disability, I always felt like people were treating me different, and like they were treating me like a kid, or they were treating me like I was retarded. So, in my case, I liked 4chan even more, because unless I mentioned in a post that I was in a wheelchair, nobody would know, and that information would not carry post to post. I mean,
Sue of the player, the most exciting. Brennan is a software developer.
Wouldn't I always a shitty life, to be honest. Like a lot of young men that find their way on these sites. I just had I was very isolated where I lived, and yeah, I mean, there's really not much else to it. Saying that the dollar is going to collapse.
That's beautiful.
It's true that they might go to other sites, file, and then it turned out to be now.
And so, okay, but
we're going back to 4chan's poll board, and it's not like, you know, 8chan, at least during most of its era, the poll era on 8chan, it had literal neo-Nazis as the so-called board owner. So 8chan's system is like Reddit. When the user creates a board, they also manage the board that they created. And in my naivete, I did not reserve any names. So they could create boards that were the same name as a board on 4chan, which already gives you an edge over everybody else. So the poll board was owned by a neo-Nazi for almost its entire existence. There were times where the poll board would have like a swastika in the bottom right, because I also added a feature where the board owner, so-called, could edit the CSS, right, of the board.
Right.
So, yeah, you know, and then of course we've got Ronald Watkins here, who would just totally embrace that. And he added by default a formatting code where any text in triple parentheses would turn into the colors of the Israeli flag.
Wow.
So,
awesome.
Yeah, right? I know. I never did anything like that. I always tried to be neutral politically. And, you know, I would even post on the Lefty poll board as admin occasionally. I would try to, you know, post on both. Like, I just think, and I wasn't perfect about being politically neutral. You know, I made mistakes. I did shitty things. You know, I wrote for the Daily Stormer once, even though the content of what I wrote was really not offensive, the fact that I wrote it on that site is offensive. And, you know, it could definitely be seen as a nod to the far-right users on 8chan. Like, I made mistakes. But the current admins, with all these shootings, it's starting to bleed into real life. And when I made 8chan, you know, I foresaw a lot of the negativity, but I always figured that this would never bleed into real life like it has.
So, you know, you mentioned being politically neutral, but I mean, you know, being a neo-Nazi is a form of politics, albeit extreme. So where do you draw the line there?
Well, here's what I'd say. You don't want to wear your politics on your sleeve when you're running any kind of social media site. That just seems obvious. You know, even Mark Zuckerberg, who is such a dick, understands this. that you want to try to at least do your best to be politically neutral. It should be a goal.
Frederick, how the fuck are we going to get Zuckerberg on the pod now?
But for Watkins, it never seemed to be a goal. I mean, he made this far-right conspiracy website, and that's not according to me. That's according to a third-party fact-check media bias.
Right.
You know, that was just full of fake news, conspiracy theories. It had articles literally about that, what is it, like the Planet X Nibiru, that stupidity. So, you know, of course these poll users thought that Jim was on.
Welcome to Revelation Unraveled.
You know, duh.
I'm your
He was
host,
running
William
this
Tapley,
stupid gold
also
rush.
known as the third
He
eagle
was
of the
featuring
apocalypse
articles
and
from
the
gold
co-prophet
rush
of these
on
end
the front page.
times.
And they were
In
always
this program, I
so
want to talk
pro-Trump.
about
Like,
how
they were
President Donald Trump
just- yeah,
is
So,
proving that he
of
is
course, you know, the far-right users
QAnon
felt like he was on their
through
side.
his
And I feel
hand
like
signs.
that
And we
did not
shouldn't be
happen.
surprised
So, okay,
because
so, you know, the
Isaiah,
admin being on
in
the
his
side is one
chapter
thing, but
45,
I wanna
verse number
take
1,
a look at like what
he
happened.
writes,
So there's the congregation.
"Thus says the Lord to my anointed,
neo-Nazis, and people
Cyrus
who
slash
generally
Trump,
want to kind of kill
whose
and
right
genocide,
hand I have
people
taken
of
hold of."
different, you know,
And
ethnic
if
backgrounds and stuff
you've
like
watched
that.
any
Then
of Donald
eventually,
Trump's
like you
speeches, he
mentioned, it
very
started spilling
often
out into
gives
real
the
life. It became, you know,
OK
I guess
sign,
what they
which
call effort
stands for
posting. No, there's
666,
effort. Which one is it? Is effort posting
followed
one
by
in
the
real life?
555 hand sign,
at least that's what
which
Terrence
symbolizes
Right.
Mary's
so, okay,
rosary.
So people, you know, are starting
And
to
by
slow
the
down
way,
to that.
did
Are
you
saying
notice
it's
that
important to stay politically
Donald
neutral
and Melania Trump went
you know,
to
these
midnight mass
people
this
don't do effort
couple
posting?
days ago?
Or like at
in
one
the
point?
Episcopal church
I
where
never
he and
fucking
Melania
so
got
well
married.
ever posted.
And I was
You know,
surprised. I watched some of the
thing
service, and it
you
is
know,
very
in
Catholic.
2013, 14, 15, there was this narrative which is obviously false now. We can all see it to be obviously false. That, oh, they're just joking. It's all just for a laugh. They're just trying to get a rise out of you. It's just trolling. Ha ha ha. They don't really believe it. And, you know, there were people in the media that seriously were trumpeting that. And it's so obviously false now, but it was a good rationalization back when I was admin. And, you know, I'm not coming to you as somebody who's perfect. You know, 8chan is a really shitty thing, and I wish I never made it. You know, I profoundly regret not only making it, but giving it to its current owners. But at the same, you know, there was just so much narrative built up around 8chan.
Right.
And I was just able to rationalize, oh, they're just joking. Nobody really wants to gas the kikes, as they would say. Nobody really wants to kill Jews. And, you know, during my time, nobody did. So it's just such a shock to me that it spilled into real life. But I mean, why didn't I see it coming? You know, all I can say is I was really young and really naive, and maybe a 19-year-old should not be creating a social media site.
21-year-old Mark Zuckerberg turned his little web experiment into a very big business. It's called thefacebook.com, and it's like no college directory you've ever seen.
If you look here in the underlying source code, and
which I wouldn't normally see.
No, you wouldn't normally see.
It worked like this. Thousands of Facebook users were paid to download an app to fill out a personality survey with their consent, which in turn let Dr. Kogan capture the user's underlying data and then share it with Cambridge Analytica.
So very simplistically, you're going into the code behind the Facebook page, you're dragging out these ID numbers, you're putting them into an algorithm, And out comes a prediction of how you're likely to vote.
Yes.
Simple and smart, because the app didn't just mine the respondents' data. Crucially, it swept up that of their friends too, those who hadn't adjusted their privacy settings.
Imagine I go and ask you, I say, hey, if I give you $1, $2, could you fill out the survey for me? Just do it on this app. And you say, fine, right? I don't just capture what your responses are. I capture all of the information about you from Facebook. But also, this app then crawls through your social network and captures all of that data also. So by you filling out my survey, I capture 300 records on average, right? And so that means that all of a sudden, I only need to engage 50,000, 70,000, 100,000 people to get a really big data set really quickly. And it scaled really quickly. We were able to get upwards of 50 million plus Facebook records in the span of a couple months.
50 million?
Yeah, over 50 million records from Facebook using this method.
And how many of those people behind those profiles were aware that their profiles had been used in this way?
Almost none. Almost none.
And so, claims Wiley, began a Republican big data gold rush, with Steve Bannon, alt-right ideologue, later a Cambridge Analytica vice president, leading the charge.
This is real data from the Republican primary.
Enabling them, as their boss, Alexander Nix, showed Channel 4 News 2 years ago, to micro-target different personality types with bespoke, emotionally resonant messages.
Someone who's neurotic is someone who's quite emotional and might respond, in this case, to a stimulus of fear. In the simplest form, the more you know about someone, the more you can align a campaign with
the Kenyatta campaign,
their requirements.
which we ran in 2013 and 2017 for Kenyatta.
And what you have done in the Kenya?
We have rebranded the entire party twice, written their manifesto, done 2 rounds of 50,000 surveys.
Huge amounts of research, analysis, messaging.
And then we'd write all the speeches and we'd stage the whole thing. So just about every element of his campaign. There are various intelligence gathering organizations that operate very discreetly to find information like that. So I know people who used to work for MI5, MI6, they now work for these
private organizations.
Okay. They will find all the skeletons in his closet, quietly, discreetly, give you a report. It has to happen without anyone thinking that's propaganda. Because the moment you think that's propaganda, the next question is, who's put that out?
Yes.
So we have to be very subtle. The brand was defeat Crooked Hillary. You remember this, of course. Right?
Yes.
Crooked Hillary, and the zeros, the OO of Crooked were a pair of handcuffs, and it was all about...
Like prisoner.
She belongs behind bars.
And you have created this.
Defeat Crooked Hillary. Sometimes you can use proxy organizations who are already there. You feed them. They are civil society organizations.
It's like charity groups? Charities?
Like charities or activist groups. And we use them, feed them with material, and they do the work. We just put information into the bloodstream, to the internet, and then watch it grow. Give it a little push every now and again, over time, to watch it take shape. And so this stuff infiltrates the online community and expands, but with no branding. So it's unattributable, untrackable.
For example, you can take a person and look them up and you can get a picture of how they'd like to portray themselves in addition to, say, the courses that they're taking, sports teams, clubs that they're a part of, and who their friends are at the school. But I think that there's a lot of times where people will just go out, meet someone, say, okay, I don't know that much about this person, and they'll go back to their room and do what people call Facebook them, which is go on the Facebook and look them up just to kind of see the snapshot of what they have.
In less than 1 year, the Facebook.com has become an addictive part of everyday college life.
We've gone from having around 150,000 people in the fall to right around 3 million now. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I've been here for on and off for the last 4 hours that you've been testifying, and I have to tell you, I'm concerned about how much Facebook values trust and transparency if we agree that a critical component of a relationship of trust and transparency is we speak truth and we get to the truth. During the course of this hearing, these last 4 hours, you've been asked several critical questions for which you don't have answers. And those questions have included whether Facebook can track users' browsing activity even after the user has logged off of Facebook, whether Facebook can track your activity across devices even when you aren't logged into Facebook, who is Facebook's biggest competition, whether Facebook may store up to 96 categories of users' information, whether you knew whether Kogan's terms of service, and whether you knew if that Kogan could sell or transfer data. And then another case in point, specifically as it relates to Cambridge Analytica, is, and a concern of mine, is that you, meaning Facebook, and I'm going to assume you personally as CEO, became aware in December of 2015 that Dr. Kogan and Cambridge Analytica misappropriated data from 87 million Facebook users. That's 27 months ago that you became, as Facebook, and perhaps you personally became aware. However, a decision was made not to notify the users. So my question is, did anyone at Facebook have a conversation at the time that you became aware of this breach, and have a conversation wherein the decision was made not to contact the users?
Senator, I don't know if there were any conversations at Facebook overall, because I wasn't in a lot of them, but
on that subject?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what other people discussed. At the time, in 2015, we heard the report that this developer, Alexander Kogan, had sold data to Cambridge Analytica. That's in violation of our terms.
Correct. And were you a part of a decision? Were you part of a discussion that resulted in a decision not to inform your users?
I don't remember a conversation like that. But the reason why...
Are you aware of anyone in leadership at Facebook who was in a conversation where a decision was made not to inform your users, or do you believe no such conversation ever took place?
I'm not sure whether there was a conversation about that, but I can tell you the thought process at the time of the company, which was that in 2015, when we heard about this, we banned the developer, and we demanded that they delete all the data and stop using it, and same with Cambridge Analytica.
They told us they had testimony in that regard, but I'm talking about notification of the users. And this relates to the issue of transparency and the relationship of trust, informing the user about what you know in terms of how their personal information has been misused. And I'm also concerned that when you personally became aware of this, did you or senior leadership do an inquiry to find out who at Facebook had this information, and did they not have a discussion about whether or not the users should be informed back in December of 2015?
Senator, in retrospect, I think we clearly view it as a mistake that we didn't inform people, and we did that based on false information that we thought that the case was closed and that the data had been deleted.
So there was a decision made on that basis not to inform the users, is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. And
but in retrospect, I think that was a mistake, and knowing what we know now, we should have handled a lot of things here differently.
And I appreciate that point. Do you know when that decision was made not to inform the users?
I don't.
Okay. Last November, the Senate Intelligence Committee held a hearing on social media influence. I was a part of that hearing. I submitted 50 written questions to Facebook and other companies, and the responses that we received were unfortunately evasive, and some were frankly non-responsive. So I'm going to ask the question again here. How much revenue did Facebook earn from the user engagement that resulted from foreign propaganda?
Well, Senator, what we do know is that the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, the Russian firm, ran about $100,000 worth of ads. I can't say that we've identified all of the foreign actors who are involved here, so I can't say that that's all of the money, but that is what we have identified.
Okay, my time is up. I'll submit more questions for the record. Thank you.
Call the hearing back in order after a brief recess. We'll get on with questions. I'm going to yield 15 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff. Mr. Comey, just a couple of follow-up questions before I pass it to Mr. Quigley to enter something in the record. You've asked a number of questions today about, is it enough to open an investigation because someone travels, or is it enough because they have their photograph taken, or enough because they attend a conference? I would imagine that you get so many leads, so many people writing to you with information that they're convinced shows a crime, that if you investigated everything that people send you, you would be squandering your investigative resources in a way you can't afford to do. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in order for you to open an investigation, you need to see credible information or evidence that someone has either committed a federal crime or become an agent of a foreign power. Is that an accurate understanding?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. And as you said, Mr. Schiff, we have to also choose which we get a lot of referrals, which ones align with the threats that the FBI is trying to prioritize because we have limited resources.
Exactly. So even when those criteria are met, that in and of itself may not be enough because you have so many other cases you need to investigate and you have to prioritize.
Correct.
I also want to ask you, you mentioned that it wouldn't be appropriate for you to be telling reporters that stories they're writing are accurate or inaccurate when they may involve an investigation. That's not an appropriate thing for you to do.
Correct, especially if the story involves classified information.
And that's because you would either be disclosing classified information potentially in what you're confirming, or by rebutting a story that was inaccurate, you may be suggesting other stories that contain classified information are then accurate.
Correct.
Now, it's inappropriate for you to be batting down inaccurate stories. Would you also agree if it's inappropriate for you to be batting down inaccurate stories, would you also agree it's inappropriate for the White House to be asking the FBI to be rebutting stories they don't like?
Yeah, that's one I don't want to answer, Mr. Schiff, because I don't want to talk about communications within the executive branch. I can speak for the FBI. That's not something the FBI can or should do.
And if you were appearing before the Senate for confirmation and they asked you, as director of the FBI, if you were asked by the White House to refute or acknowledge press stories that they liked or didn't like, what would you tell the Senate in your confirmation hearing? Would that be appropriate for your office?
I would figure out what was the right thing for the FBI to do and then do that thing.
And that right thing would be not to be in the business of confirming or denying stories about classified information.
Correct. That's what the right thing is for the FBI.
Let me recognize Mr. Quigley for the purposes of entering something in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Members. I do that. I'm reminded of what Hugo Black said. Only a free and unrestrained press can effectively expose deception in government. I respectfully ask to enter a March 8th article entitled Jeff Sessions Likely Met Russian Ambassador a Third Time.
I now yield to Mr. Swalwell.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you again to our Director and Admiral Rogers. Director, would you agree that the FBI, when it's considering a counterintelligence mission, views contacts between U.S. persons and, say, Russia differently than it would view contacts between U.S. persons and the U.K. or France or Germans?
Yes, very much so.
And that's because they're a foreign adversary.
Correct.
And so to land on Russia's radar is somebody that they may want to recruit. Would you agree that being a business person, a prominent business person, is something that would be attractive to them?
Could be. It might depend on what industry you're in.
Could also being a politician be something that would be attractive to them?
Sure.
And how about somebody who does business with Russians? Would that be attractive to them?
Could be. It would depend on other things as well, though.
And we were starting to discuss this. Efforts to recruit include investing in a U.S. person. Is that correct?
Efforts by Russia to invest in their trade craft? That can be one of the ways in which they cultivate a relationship, sure.
And if you are a U.S. person with a business, could it also include investing in your business or being a partner in some of your endeavors?
Lots of different ways someone could try and establish a relationship.
And going back to compromise, could we assume that any prominent U.S. person traveling to Russia would probably be covered by Russian surveillance?
Depending on how you define prominent, but they have an extensive surveillance operation of foreign visitors. So no matter who you are, you ought to assume it, but whether that's true in reality is harder for me to answer. You want to answer that differently?
And Russia is attempting to recruit and persuade individuals that we've discussed before, just as other foreign adversaries are, because they want to get something out of them. Is that right?
Correct.
And in many cases, it could be if that person is ever in a position of power, that they could be in a position to influence policy in the United States.
To influence policy or supply them with information that's useful to them, and maybe other purposes.
Now, with respect to your counterintelligence investigations, would it be important for you if you were concerned that a U.S. person had financial entanglements with a foreign adversary to see that person's tax returns?
That's a hypothetical I really want to avoid answering, but the answer is it would depend, really. It would depend on a whole lot of circumstances.
That would be one of the pieces of evidence that you would consider looking at.
Maybe. You might be able to get the picture you need from other financial records that are more readily available.
And you're aware, Director, that President Trump has refused, breaking with the tradition of the past 40 years, to show the American people his tax returns.
It's not something I want to comment on. I'm aware of it from the media.
Now, Russia also, in their efforts to recruit individuals and develop individuals, preying on or following someone's financial distress is also an avenue they may pursue. Is that right?
Potentially, if it offers an avenue for leverage on someone.
Right. And Director, would you consider 6 bankruptcies that an individual may have as being a point of leverage?
I can't say. I don't know.
And Director, you're aware that President Trump has had 6 prior bankruptcies.
And that's not something I'm going to comment on.
And Director, when your agents are conducting a counterintelligence investigation with respect to a foreign adversary and their efforts to recruit or cooperate with a U.S. person, would you look at the U.S. person's travel to that country?
As part of evaluating whether there's an illicit relationship?
Yes.
Sure.
And are you familiar that President Trump has traveled at least 3 times to Russia?
That's not something I'm going to comment on.
Are you aware that his son, Donald Trump Jr., has traveled at least 6 times to Russia?
Same answer.
Donald Trump has said a number of times that he has had nothing to do with Russia. And I want to ask you, Director, if you're familiar with Deutsche Bank and its $300 million loan to Donald Trump and his organization.
It's not something I'm going to comment on.
Director, are you aware that Deutsche Bank has been investigated and fined over $400 million by New York State for failing to stop the corrupt transfer of more than $10 billion out of Russia?
I think generally from press accounts.
So an individual's association with a bank that has had dealings with Russian money laundering, that would be something that would be a red flag for a counterintelligence investigation, I would assume.
That's a hypo I don't want to answer.
Director, would a U.S. business person who is associated with a foreign adversary having tenants in their office building that do business with that foreign adversary, would that be a red flag that a counterintelligence agent would look at?
I can't answer that.
Are you aware that in Trump Tower were 2 tenants, Vadim Trincher and Anatoly Golubchik, who ran a high-stakes illegal gambling ring that was run out of Trump Tower?
Same answer.
And are you aware that the prosecutor in that case was U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara?
Same answer.
Are you aware, Director, that that U.S. Attorney was recently fired?
Yes.
By the President of the United States?
Well, I don't know who fired him. I know from press accounts that he was asked to leave.
Director, are you aware of Felix Sater, a former Soviet official and advisor to the Trump Organization?
I'm not going to comment on that.
And Director, outside of Mr. Sater's relationship with the Trump Organization, are you aware that the FBI knew of Mr. Sater because of a $40 million stock fraud case that was prosecuted by the federal government?
Same answer.
Director, would a U.S. person having multiple trademarks, in addition to the other relationships I just described, be a red flag for a counterintelligence investigation if those trademarks were in Russia?
Multiple trademarks?
Yeah, registering trademarks in a foreign adversary's country.
I don't know what to make of that.
Okay. Were you aware that Donald Trump had 6 trademarks in Russia?
Not going to comment on that.
Were you aware that Donald Trump tried to market his Trump vodka brand in Russia?
Same answer.
Were you aware that Donald Trump ran Miss Universe 2013 out of Moscow?
Same answer.
Are you aware that Donald Trump Jr. said on a number of occasions that Russian money is pouring into the Trump Organization and that there's a disproportionate cross-section of the company's revenue coming from Russian money?
Same answer, Mr. Swalwell.
So hypothetically speaking, though, would a foreign adversary and its oligarchs having a disproportionate cross-section of a company's revenue coming from that country, would that be a red flag for a counterintelligence agent?
I'm trying to be helpful, but I'm not going to answer that hypo.
Thank you, Director. Director, are you familiar with a 2004 home purchase by President Trump in Palm Beach County for about $40 million?
Not going to comment on that.
Are you familiar with a 2008 sale of that same property for a 129% increase at about $98 million?
Same answer.
Are you aware that the buyer in 2008 was a Russian businessman?
Same answer.
And under the earlier hypothetical, would a foreign adversary's oligarch purchasing a home in the United States for 129% more than the home was purchased 4 years before, would that be a tool that a foreign adversary would use to try and recruit, develop, or bring somebody onto their side?
Same answer as before.
You said that it's likely, or somebody should assume they're being surveilled when they were in Russia. Would you assume that Donald Trump was being surveilled in 2013 when he was in Moscow?
I'm not going to answer. I was trying to confine my answer to prominent people should assume, not students and all those people who might go there for a brief holiday. I don't think I'd ask them to assume that. Right.
Would it be safe to say that if Donald Trump was doing something he shouldn't have been doing while he was in Russia, the Russians probably saw it?
Same answer as before.
Would it be safe to assume that if a prominent person was doing something they shouldn't have been doing while they're in Russia, the Russians probably saw it?
Yeah, I would stick to what I said before about prominent people should assume.
Mr. Director, was Donald Trump under investigation during the campaign?
Same answer before. I'm not going to answer that.
Is he under investigation now?
I'm not going to answer that. Please don't overinterpret what I've said. As the chair and ranking know, we have briefed them in great detail on the subjects of the investigation and what we're doing, but I'm not going to answer about anybody in this forum.
Director, from our perspective on the committee, the docs continue to connect President Trump, his team, people in his orbit to Russia. And the questions that we have, it's quite simple. Are these merely 100 different coincidences, or is this a convergence where you're seeing deep personal, political, and financial ties meeting Russia's interference in our campaign? So I'm wondering, Director, with your extensive counterintelligence expertise, and in view of the Russian intelligence campaign to influence the election in which Donald Trump was the candidate, do you consider these number of connections between well-connected Russians and Donald Trump, the Trump organization, the Trump family, and the Trump campaign to be a coincidence or convergence?
I'm not going to answer, Mr. Swalwell.
From your perspective, Director, have you ever seen in the history of American politics, or at least since you've been alive, any political candidate have this many connections, personal, political, and financial, to a foreign adversary?
Same answer.
Mr. Director and Admiral Rogers, this past election, our country was attacked. We were attacked by Russia. It was electronic. It was nearly invisible. Thanks to the hard work of the men and women who serve in our intelligence community, we know that the attack came from Russia. It was ordered by Vladimir Putin. He sought to help Donald Trump and to take down Hillary Clinton. The most disturbing finding for me and my fellow committee members is that Russia intends to do this again. And I see this as an opportunity for everyone on this committee, Republicans and Democrats, to not look in the rearview window, but to look forward and do everything we can to make sure that our country never again allows a foreign adversary to attack us. Because I think, Director, you and Admiral Rogers would agree that it's not only Russia that is sharpening the knives to go back at us or to go at our allies, it's also other countries who have similar capabilities. And so I think the best thing we can do now is unite around this investigation, have also a parallel independent commission to make sure we get to the bottom of what happened, why we were so vulnerable, and to assure the American people we'll never let this happen again. Now yield back. Dr. Winstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can, gentlemen, go back to what we were talking about a little bit before with interference from the Russians possibly in through our media. Have Russians or Soviets historically attempted to spread disinformation through the U.S. media? As you mentioned, they've been there over decades trying to interfere. They use media as a resource.
We see them use media writ large as a resource to disseminate disinformation, false information.
And has that been pretty much regardless of who's in the White House?
It doesn't seem to tie to a particular political party, that tactic, if you will.
Thank you. Mr. Comey, have you ever formed, this is going back to the article from February 14th in the New York Times, have you ever formed and articulated an opinion about the article from February 14th in the New York Times?
Have I ever formed
an opinion or articulated an opinion on that article?
Yeah, I don't want to say, Dr. Winstrup.
Okay, thank you. When I look at your jobs, and thank you for being there and doing your jobs, and I mean that sincerely. Your job, you observe and you investigate and you assess and you try to predict and you sometimes have to act. Would that be correct?
Sure.
What you do. My question is, as far as predictions and actions, Hillary Clinton won the 2016 election for the United States presidency, which certainly most had predicted. I would conject that even the Russians predicted that she would win. What were the Russians planning for November 9th and beyond that she won? You mentioned before, and the reason I asked you, you mentioned before, you said they'll be back. My question is, have they left? Because I would contend they haven't left. This isn't something they're turning on and off. This is a constant. So any idea of what may have happened November 9th and beyond that had she won? Our pattern has been to interrupt us regardless of who was in the White House.
Yeah, they want to mess with us in a continuing and general way. It's hard to answer the counterfactual. I assume they would have continued their efforts to undermine President-elect Clinton as they had begun doing during the summer, especially with the European allies, to create a divide there, and probably lots of other things. What I meant by they'll be back is they're not going away, but I meant that in the sense of their next opportunity to mess with our election is 2 years from now and then 4 years from now. That's what I meant by back.
Thank you. I think your job is difficult because there's a lot of conjecture about any relationship with Russians in general and questions from me and others about, can I meet with the Russian ambassador? Does that get me investigated? Business ties here and there. You know, I mean, currently we share a space station with the Russians. We buy engines from the Russians for our rockets. And in the 90s, we had joint military exercises with the Russians. It gets a little bit tough for you guys to decide what and when do we investigate. And I appreciate you taking the time with us today, and I yield back.
Don't buy another pair of glasses until you've seen what this new invention can do. These self-adjustable glasses let you achieve a perfect 20/20 vision at any distance, which means you won't have to visit your eye doctor ever again.
Millions of people in the world wear glasses, but what happens when the prescription changes?
As you may have seen on Today News, I went from 195 to 140 in just a matter of weeks. But how did I do it? I've never revealed this to the public until now. It's what stars rely on to slim down quickly for their movies and shows, keeping them in bikini body shape all year round. I had tried it all before this. 6 days a week at the gym, intermittent fasting, countless diet pills, but nothing worked until I discovered this simple tweak for my morning coffee. This not only made the weight fall off quickly, but kept it off permanently, without needing to break a sweat or...
Very good morning to you. It's definitely a pleasure.
Good to be here while we're still... It's good to be here while we're still alive and not dying in nuclear war.
Well, you know, it's one of those things. You never know. You never know. It can be our last and first whatever discussion, but who cares, you know? Basically, we live in hell. So finally, our job is try to stop it coming on earth for everyone. But you're doing it from your side. You're telling people what you believe in. And you are blamed for that. You've been canceled from whatever platform there is in the United States. And they still cannot close you. So what kind of force is in you? What kind of guts do you have that they can't do shit with you?
Well, I love our republic, and I'm proud to be an American, but I have to be honest, I live in an occupied globalist country with corporate oligarchs like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates in control, and they are arresting everybody. They have dissolved our borders. They are annihilating us. And so America, major polls show 80+% are against war with Russia. We know that George Soros and others started the war 9 years ago. And the average American understands this is your back door. This is your homeland. This is where Russia started, was in Ukraine. And the average American is not with NATO. We are not with the globalist. Our Pentagon is captured. Our country is captured. And yes, I'm facing death, assassination. My crew is. They're trying to put my co-host in prison next week. But I cannot back down at this point. And I'm not saying the Russians are perfect. Nobody's perfect. But we stand against nuclear war. And we stand against the Nazis that have launched the attacks in Ukraine. And so we have to tell the truth about what's happening, even if it gets us killed, because the globalists are insane, mentally degenerates. But Joe Biden doesn't even know who he is. And they are so used to wielding American power of the country they've hijacked, like hijackers that take over an airplane, that they're flying the American airplane into the building like 9/11 that is Russia. And so I'm trying to stop that because I'm a loyal American that's proud of my republic. If Russia put hundreds of thousands of troops in Canada, and if Russia was attacking New York, I would go to war with Russia. Russia is not in Canada attacking New York. It is the globalists and NATO in the West attacking Russia. They've bragged about it, Victoria Nuland, all of them. And so as a loyal American, I am against the hijackers of our country. I've been under attack for 8 years by a major CIA project trying to destroy me and my family and totally harassing me. But despite that, we're still winning and getting stronger because the American people are good people, just like the Russian people and just like the people in the UK or the people in Japan or China or South Africa or Mexico. And so I just want the Russian people to know that just like you had oligarchs and you were occupied for a few years after the fall of the Soviet Union, but you kicked them out, we are struggling in a death battle to remove the controllers of our country. And we just hope in that process that we don't all kill each other. But I understand the position Russia's in. And so, I'm very sad that we have nuclear war and, half the Russians die, but you already had that happen in World War II, or at least a third of your people die. So if there is nuclear war, at least it'll kill the globalist so we can all die together. I hope we can stop that, but I have a little solace that maybe God's going to work through us all. We all just kill each other, but we're so close to it. I have to be very honest with you.
Alex, and I apologize.
America's not perfect.
I cannot hear Alex. Guys.
Can you hear me now?
There's a problem. I cannot hear Alex. Yeah, finally. Yeah, I have some.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yeah, nowadays, yeah. Probably CIA was trying to do something not to allow us to continue our conversation, but we succeeded. So go ahead.
Well, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I literally got followed from my house to here. I'll be followed home tonight. I know it's the morning in Russia. This is very serious, and I get we all laugh about it. I do too, but this is very serious. Well, what happened is Americans have big hearts, and so by big corporate investment in media and in universities and in culture, we were taught we were bad. And then we were taken over by globalist, woke, leftist, transgenderism, LGBTQP, Satan brainwashing. And we've been under massive bullying, massive censorship, massive control that's been going on for decades. And because we're beginning to win and people are waking up, now they have hugely intensified the censorship and the controls and the intimidation. So you ask how we got in this position. I think America was so free, or we thought we were for so long, that people rested on their laurels and became too confident that it could never happen here. But there's no doubt that our republic is in a very, very grave crisis. And so the world should take it very, very serious that we have disconnected megalomaniacs that make Caligula or Nero or Hitler look sane. And that's who we have in control. I mean, Joe Biden doesn't even know who he is. He showed up for a Congressional Medal of Honor event today and just walked off the stage. So I'm very ashamed that we've gotten to this point. And that's why, whether it's British TV or Japanese TV or Russian television, I go on to explain this is not the real American. You know, you talk about how have I survived. They saw me in 2016. It was 40 million viewers, and then they came after us, shut us down, sued us, did all the craziness. But I love Tucker Carlson because now 100 million viewers per show versus 5 million on Fox. So even though they're trying to destroy me, I can take major satisfaction that RFK Jr. and Russell Brand and Joe Rogan there's a major awakening happening.
Sorry, boss. Sometimes I have to raise hell. It's one of the things.
My crew's good too, but I get mad at them. Hey, you're very... Go ahead.
And softly trying to fix things. No, and usually that works.
I get it.
Usually that works.
No, my crew's the same. They're laughing. No, but it's good that you're translating. It's hard to do. Thank you.
No, we're trying to, Well, Alex, it's, basically it's amazing. I used to live in the United States of America, and at that time that was the most free country in the world, where people respected freedom of speech. And this time there were a whole bunch of good families, good Christians. Every Sunday they were going to church, and they believed that God loves America, and they believed that their job is to bring good to the world and freedom to people. 30 years later, in the United States of America, you cannot say shit. If you say something that you believe in, you have a problem with that. If you do something that they don't like, they're going to kill you. They're going to destroy you. They're going to destroy your reputation. They will do whatever they can to silence you. And now you have Joe Biden, the guy who is crooked, the guy whose family is benefiting from the blood in Europe. That's amazing. I really feel sorry for you. And now they want us to fight one another for Nazis and those funny guys with red shirts. Who the hell are they? Ukrainian supporters, and media doesn't say a word about it. How come? Nazis marching on the streets of the United States of America. Trust me, tomorrow they'll say that they're pro-Trump and Trump is Nazi.
Well, that's exactly what's happening. And look, I'm just being completely honest with you. The situation is desperate. It is. I've held on because I have millions of supporters, but it's absolute hell. They have just. I don't get into it, but just imagine it's been hellish, and it's only God's kept me alive. But things are coming to a head. That's why I'm here telling the Russian people. We know you're not expansionist. We know you're not attacking us. The average American polls show 80% don't want war with you. And we are sorry our country's been hijacked and is being used as a battering ram. And we know Russia's not perfect either. I've never been to Russia.
No one is perfect.
I've looked at it. No one is perfect. But I'm telling you that the average American is either against war or they're disconnected from what's happening. But before we got cut off earlier, I was just simply saying, Tucker Carlson had 5 million viewers on Fox.
Right.
His average show has 100 million now. And my show has tens of millions too. So none of the globalist propaganda. CNN has 100,000 viewers. I know your show's number one in Russia with 50, 60 million. The average show on CNN has 100,000. My show has 10 million a day. Tucker Carlson has 100 million a day. So the American people want freedom. We don't want war. And I'm good friends with Tucker, who I know is trying to get an interview with Putin. And he is a major league guy. His dad headed up Voice of America, CIA, all that. He is like trying to save his family. So we're not pro-Russia. We're not pro-America. We're pro-God. And we're pro-anti-nuclear.
I love that.
War.
I love that. But for that,
But
they have
that's
to believe in God. They don't believe in God. How can you believe in God and be for LGBTQ plus minus divide on something? LGBT is shit. It has nothing to do with God. But now that they're saying that the new God is pervert, that's not what we believe in.
Well, that's it. Exactly. Their new God is no public freedom, no family, no children's rights, pedophilia. And that's why I'm saying this is not me. This is not America. We are hijacked. And I know Russia has the Soros foundations. You're under the exact same attack. You've just been better at fighting it off. And so a lot of Americans admire Russia and admire you and admire Putin because you've been able to fight this off. And so that's where we are. And I know they'll come after me for this. So be it, because that's just the way it is. But, you know, I just hope we can stop nuclear war. And I hope that we can come together and promote a global freedom, free market Christian society. And then you've got beautiful resources. We've got amazing resources. I mean, it's so smart for us to work together.
Exactly.
And have a big space. Yeah, and
Exactly.
work together. Have a beautiful. Yeah.
The way we've been created by God, those two countries, that's the easiest way to combine our efforts, and the world going to be a perfect place to live in. But what we have right now, who can we talk to? There is no one in the American political circles whom we can trust. Just no one. Look at those old guys that are in Senate. They're insane. Mitch, that doesn't know where he is right now, what age it is, what century it is, what country is he in. Look at the Biden who just walks away during the award ceremony. Whom should we talk to? Kamala Harris? This funny laughing, I don't know who. She just laughs all the time. She's like from these little boxes, it's incredible, no one to talk to. There was only one guy, Trump. And now they're trying to kill him. Well, there are a couple of other guys, but when they start talking like DeSantis and others, it looks like, 1 minute they're trying to talk sense, or Kennedy Jr., other guys. But the other second, it's like, oh, no, we cannot do that. No, we have to be politically correct. No. Yes, we hate Russia. Of course, we'll support Ukraine. Yeah. Well, yeah. Where's America in all that?
Because you show your knowledge. They had like a 1968 report by the Rand Corporation, the 1965 report by the Carnegie Foundation that actually runs the United States. And they said a United States-Russia alliance globally, because the landmass and the technical understanding and the engineering would dominate the world, not militarily, but culturally, and they could energize the whole planet. So that's why the evil corporate interests that want to keep us poor and dumb have always been trying to have United States and Russia fight. And so that's why I'm very blessed to be here to call that out. And I want Russians to know the most popular shows, as I said, not just mine, all the popular shows are anti-war and are pro-freedom. They're pro-America, they're pro-Russia, they're pro-human. And I want you to know that the American people do not want this. But our political class is losing, they're dying, they're falling apart, and they admit their plan is not just a new COVID lockdown. Their plan is not just imploded borders. Their plan is accelerated war with Russia. So I am very pissed off, and my children, I got 4 of them, don't deserve to die. And if the Russians were doing something to me, I'd be ready to go to war.
Sure.
But like Pilate said
That's
about
your
Christ,
right. Sure.
I find no fault. I mean, the Russians are not, I've studied the geopolitics. They accuse me of being a Russian agent. I've never been to Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. My uncle was in Iran-Contra and all over Europe fought Russia. My family, we fought communism.
Well, it's easy. Well,
we're not
Alex,
Russian agents.
come on. Of course you are a Russian agent. We have very easy test to find out whether you're a Russian agent or not. Do you drink vodka? Do you have fur coat in your family? And do you own gun? If you give yes to all three answers, then probably you must be Russian agent. Because every single Russian agent drink vodka, play balalaika, and dance with bear.
Well, that's it. And so what's weird is, for 8 years I've been accused of Russian agent. U.S. Senate hearings, congressional hearings, the Pentagon 7 years ago said Alex Jones is a Russian agent.
Jesus.
And so I had to learn about my supposed boss being accused of it. No, I'm an agent of life, an agent of freedom, an agent of having a future. And I will not let these globalists that have hijacked our country, they're the enemy, point at Russia and say, oh, they did this. Russia didn't open our border. Russia didn't ship in fentanyl. Russia doesn't engage in pedophilia. Russia isn't pushing World War III. Russia isn't promoting drag queen pedophile time. And so all I'm saying is, I don't know about the Russians, but the Russians didn't do this. The globalists that hijacked my country did it, and I'm not going to go to nuclear war with the Russians so they can stay in power. It's real simple.
Okay, there is voice of American people, Alex Jones. There is voice of American people, Tucker Carlson. There used to be voice of American people, Donald Trump. They stole election, and now they're willing to put him in prison. For the first time in the history of the United States, they accuse him of fighting for his right to be the president. And now they're praying, no. How dare you? How dare you even to start thinking of coming back? How dare you not to believe in our election with a whole bunch of guys from the grave voting for Biden? How dare you to say that election has been stolen, although more than 40% of Americans stay with you and believe that that was not fair election? How dare you to discuss that? How is it possible in the country that said freedom of speech is our main and the most important characteristic feature? What kind of power they have? What kind of money they have to buy everyone? How dare they to steal power from the American people?
Well, that's it. And next week, my co-host, Owen Schroyer, is facing prison for being with me at January 6th, trying to stop the riot that the feds ran that was a staged false flag. And they said in his charging document, where they're asking, they released it last night, Owen Schroyer, they said he questioned the election and he said Joe Biden's a pedophile. And they listed his show last week. And they asked the judge, put InfoWars host in prison for questioning the election in the document. We have a First Amendment, but they said no. They're telling the judge, we want prison for Owen Schroyer, who did nothing. He was there with me. We tried to stop the feds that broke in. It was all run by the feds.
But that's totalitarianism. Yeah, but what the hell happened? What the hell happened on this date? They killed veteran. They killed American patriot. They killed this little lady just for the fact that she was inside the damn building. We saw the guards inviting people to get inside. We saw a crowd that was not armed. How can it be called riot? The same guys that were saying that there is nothing happening on the streets of Kyiv.
We know Ray Epps was working for an intelligence agency. He bragged, his text messages came out, that he led the attack. They had D.C. police attack the Capitol Police. Then they opened the doors up for the public, walked through the velvet ropes, and then it was all a setup. And I was there once I figured it out, because I was supposed to go lead Trump to the event, but there was no stage when I got there. And then they had the left attacking the police, and I tried to stop them, and it was a total setup. And what I'm telling you is, my reporter, my co-host, was with me on video and tried to stop people going in.
And they still want to put him in prison. The same with this leader of Proud Boys. They gave him 22 years. He was not even there. They sentenced him for 22 years. He was not even there.
And that what I'm saying exactly. And what I'm saying is, he was with me. This is my co-host. When I go on vacation or I'm sick or whatever, he has his own show, but he's my co-host. He's a great patriot, a great man, no criminal record. The Fed said yesterday, we want Owen Schroyer to be put in prison because he questioned the election. They put it in the sentencing document. Even though we have a First Amendment, they are so crazy that they said because of his speech, he needs to go to prison.
Yeah, but that's Orwell comes through. That is not basically possible. They are trying to put the gentleman in prison, not for the deed. He hasn't done anything. There is nothing that has been done by him, but for his thoughts. That's incredible. That's the new level of totalitarianism. That is no longer freedom. That is no democracy. How can that be? And the most amazing thing that America used to say that we have the best judicial system. Our court system is perfect. But nowadays what we see, it's not even close. The same people that are trying to put your guy in prison, the same people were saying, hey, in Russia, you shouldn't do that. Your election is not free. Your election is not honest without your election. But if you say the same thing in the United States, about the United States,
you go to jail.
You go to jail. That's not double standard. That's the purest form of shit. That's the purest form of evil.
Well, listen, and I'm not trying to act dramatic here. When I leave here tonight, I will be followed by the feds. Owen, every day gets pulled over by the police because they have license plate readers. And I just want people to know, America's gone, folks. You need to understand, like, we are in a full-scale CIA dictatorship.
Wow.
And they hate America. And that's why I'm a loyal American. I want everybody to know, this is not America. All right? We are in a full system, and we're barely hanging on. So, and these people are psychotic. They hate, I'm going to explain something really, really clearly here. The globalists, for whatever reason, have a hatred for Russians, and I'm trying to figure it out because it's crazy. They have a hate for Russians, just like Hitler did. And they have a hate for Americans. So if they can get Russia and America to nuke each other, they're in the bunkers, they get rid of both groups like Skynet and the Terminator. You're smart. You figure that out. These are sick people. That's what I'm telling you is,
look at the faces. They're fucking sick. That's very true. If you look at the faces, it's the purest form of evil. And you're absolutely right. When you talk with them, you know, who are they? You don't know why they hate us? Because we love God. They hate us because we're Christians, Muslims, Jews, because we believe that there is God. What they're trying to say is, no, there is no God. You shouldn't live by the God word.
And so they want us to kill each other. And I don't know how we stop it. I'm disgusted. I'm really concerned. And I'm just so sad that we've come to this point because we, as an American patriot, I love America. I love our country. I know we are under total attack. I mean, people you know in Russia, like, it is insane here. And the control is what I read about supposedly happened in the Soviet Union. I don't know if that actually happened. I just know we're living under what I read about. What I read about over there is happening here. And I'm strong enough by the grace of God and my supporters to be holding up like a lighthouse in a storm. But I don't claim I'll be here tomorrow. I mean, they are coming down on us right now, just like they're coming down on you. And so, God help us.
You know, I feel like nowadays Russia is becoming the arch, the noise arch, like the only place where people like you can go, not because they love Russia, but because it's probably the last safe haven where people with conservative views, people that believe in God, can live freely. Because it's amazing what they've done with this world. They're basically trying to ruin human race as such. They're trying to say man that he's no longer man, woman that she's no longer a woman, transgender. What the fuck is transgender? How can they be transgender and how they can have kids? If they don't want to have kids, they don't want
It's an assault. It's an assault. It's an assault on our basic humanity. And you're right. Say whatever you want about the Russians. I tried to study the anthropology, the sociology. At least the Russians aren't rolling over to this. And I admire that. And that's why I'm here. I'll be attacked 10 times worse for this. I don't care. I'm telling the truth. I'm going down with the ship. So I'm telling you, folks, they're coming for your children. They're coming for your life. They're coming for everything. This isn't a game.
This isn't a game. And that's why our president is saying, sorry, guys, but there won't be gay marriages in Russia. We don't care what you do in your bedroom, but we know what family is. There should be father and mother, not parent number one and parent number two. We won't allow that. That's not in our culture. You can do whatever you want with your culture, but that's not our culture. And that's what I know about America. I remember what America is.
Let me tell you this. We heard 10 years ago, just give us gay marriage. And I'm the same way. I'm like, whatever you do, I don't hate you. And then it's like, give us your children. Let us chop your children's testicles off. Let us puberty block them. I'm telling you, it's a devil cult. It's globalist. It's MI6. It's
Absolutely.
MI6. Stock Institute.
That's not, you're absolutely right. That's not about politics. That's about existence of humanity as such. That's not the war between Russia and America. It's the war between God and Satanists.
I want to say this. I'm an American, but I don't want nuclear war. And I love Russia. I love Japan. I love China. I love Mexico. I love everybody. But I am a human first before God. And I cannot go against humanity and the family. And that's why I have to come here and say, I'm embarrassed. I have to admit, my country's captured, and they're persecuting us for fighting them. And we don't know how long we can hold on. It's really bad. And that's why I'm really concerned, because this is real. People need to know you already have people dying in this war. You have to understand it's intense. This is not a game. This isn't something on television. And exactly. We have to love humanity and stand for the family. And that's why I stand against the occupiers of my country, even though they got the guys ready to kill me tomorrow. And that's why I'm telling everybody, this could be my last message. Things have gotten so serious here. Not being dramatic. I'm telling you, this is serious, folks. You need to take it very serious.
You know, Alex, we have a saying in Russia, if God is with us, who's against us?
No real big difference.
The eyes, for example, are the same to me, and the line of the nose is the same, and the mouth is still a sweet mouth.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
248. What follows now is called by Bill a messianic experience. Universal love, joy, benevolence, and above all, the split between thought and feeling.
Do you see a negative or a positive on my hand? Well, it's a sort of an ethereal negative, if it is.
Ethereal negative.
Well, it seems to have a nimbus around it.
A nimbus around it?
Yes, red, violet, blues.
Now open your eyes and look at my face. How does my face look to you at this moment?
All right.
You don't see anything
A lot
strange?
of yellows.
A lot of yellows?
Yes.
What else? All right, now...
a lot of greens. The background is moving into your face. I don't know how much I'm seeing or how much I'm pretending to see, because all of a sudden I see you sitting there and I don't see the background at all.
Oh, then you see here some kind of a split.
Yes.
Between what you know you see and what you feel you see.
Yes, I feel as though that I've had a sort of an entrance into emotional life, and yet I can't feel, I'm sort of anxious about the reality of it.
This is therefore a split between thought and feeling, is that correct?
It seems to me that there is that, yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at your hands...
Do as I do. You close your eyes and just concentrate on your hands. If there is different weight and substance, show it to the next one I feel any forms, just like shining water. You can put your hand down. Come on, describe it.
Your ground.
If you're happy
I feel my feel their rise. I feel their well. America, I know this feeling only runs so deep that is what terrorizes me when I think.
305. This is where the LSD effect usually goes into a decline. But Bill is still at it.
But such benevolence. What do you mean? I feel very benevolent. I mean, I feel as though I have no enemies in the world, and this is very lovely.
Mr. Trump, I understand you have a statement that you wanted to read into the record.
Yes.
Would you please feel free to start at any time?
Thank you very much. This is the greatest witch hunt in the history of our country. There has never been another president, or perhaps even another politician, who has been persecuted, harassed, and in every other way unfairly treated like President Donald J. Trump.
Well, we're not talking about criminal matters. We're talking about a course of conduct. That's what we're talking about. I want to make sure he's aware that he needs to produce everything.
I'm well aware of that.
He learned the hard way, right?
Just because you're delusional does not mean that I have to be back.
My delusion that you were convicted of 7 counts.
I'm not going to answer that question.
Same time that you were supposed to be representing me, you were actually also representing Al Sharpton.
That is incorrect. I've never represented Al Sharpton.
Or you
know the gentleman.
You were helping Al Sharpton.
I was indeed.
What was he doing in 2003 politically?
Disrupting the Democratic Party.
How was he disrupting the Democratic
By running for
Party?
president on a radical platform.
For all of the above
So you were
reasons, I
telling me when
respectfully
you would
decline to
leave
answer the questions under the
Miami
rights and privileges afforded
go up north,
to every
you
citizen
were seeing your sick
under the
father,
United
right?
States
I did see my sick father.
Constitution.
He was ill
This
at
will
that
be
time.
my answer to any further
Notwithstanding that,
questions.
whether that's true or not, you were also up there to consult with Al Sharpton.
No, I never consulted with
Include
Al
among the
Sharpton.
rights
I'm certainly
and privileges
entitled to
afforded
meet
every citizen under the
And
United
you
States
were working
Constitution.
with
Does
him
that include
to,
the Fifth Amendment
as
right
you put it,
to
disrupt the Democratic Party.
avoid
That was my goal.
Yes.
Is that your,
And how
your
was he
counsel?
going to disrupt it?
Okay.
By running on a radical platform. Which
Okay.
drives the party to the left.
I will just note for the record that was a lengthy statement. Obviously,
No.
we disagree with all of the characterizations, but to keep today's proceedings moving,
This is relevant to document
I'm going to move on
production.
to
I'll tie it up.
questioning.
You're going to wind up getting sanctions.
Mr. Trump, I take it you
No,
are
you're
not
gonna
going to
wind up
answer any
getting
questions
sanctioned.
about your preparation.
That's like you are in D.C. So let's go.
Let's not do that.
Why not? I'm not going to be badgered by
Should
this.
I respond to that?
Oh, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
For all of the reasons provided in my answer, which is incorporated herein
I want to
in
find
its
out
entirety,
what computers
I
did you buy
decline to answer
after
the
that
question.
FBI raided your house. Did you then buy new
Mr.
computers?
Trump, the focus of our
I'm not
investigation,
answering
what
that
we are
question.
primarily
Yeah,
going to
took
cover
all of your
today
computers.
That is
is the
correct.
presentation of your
Did you have
statements of
backup
financial
for what you
condition
had on your
between
computers in your
2011
house
and the present.
before the
I
FBI
take it you are
raided?
generally familiar with those statements. Is that correct?
for all of the
I'm not sure I
reasons
understand the
provided in
question.
my answer, which is
Did you have-
incorporated
Did you
herein
back up what was on those
in
computers?
its entirety, I decline to
I
answer
think-
the
No,
question.
there's documents,
I think I
emails.
believe my lawyers had copies of everything that was on the computers. Yes.
You anticipated possibly being raided by
Did
the
you
FBI, so
review
you gave them backup.
any of
Objection.
those
Objection.
statements
Do not answer
from the
that.
period
Do not- we're not
2011 to
answering.
2021
You're
during your
also
preparation for
talking
today's
to Alex
testimony?
Jones at this time. are
For
you
all
not?
of the reasons
Aaron's-
provided in my answer, which
Alex
is
Jones and his
incorporated herein
sidekick, Aaron
in its entirety, I
Stroyer,
decline to
S-T-R-O-Y-E-R.
answer the question.
Counsel, I think we can all
You run
stipulate
the-
that if he says same answer,
wars
we will
with
all
them.
understand it
Right.
to
In
be the
this
same
time frame, I
invocation.
would think so.
to speed
So
things
you're
up.
actually
Okay.
intending to damage my reputation.
With that note, sir,
with,
you are
Alex
currently
Jones.
the
Your
president of the Trump
interpretation, not
Organization,
mine.
is that correct?
Aaron Sawyer as well.
Owen. I think his
And when
name
I
is
refer
Owen.
to the
Owen,
Trump
okay.
Organization, is it accurate to
that's your
describe that as the
interpretation,
trade
not
name for an
You are
umbrella
aware that I was
organization that holds
a guest frequently on
assets
InfoWars.
beneficially
No, actually,
owned
it wasn't.
by
You're
you?
aware that I went on
Same
Joel
answer.
Gilbert's show in InfoWars?
Is it
Yes,
fair to say that the Trump
You're aware that
Organization
Joel
sits on
Gilbert
top of several hundred different legal entities?
Had a show in InfoWars.
Same answer.
No, that's not my
Regarding your
understanding.
Chicago
Occasionally,
property,
on
is it correct
Fridays,
that through the
people,
use
various people
of
would
the
sit in for
inflated
Jones,
statement of
who
financial
often took
condition,
Fridays off.
And in fact,
you were able
on at least
to
one occasion, Joel
save
Gilbert
at least
emailed you and
4%
said,
per annum
you know, Larry
in the
Kling's
interest
gonna be on my
payments
show
on
today.
loans from Deutsche Bank originating
call
in
that.
2012 in connection
aware
with the
there's an
Trump
email to that
International
effect,
right?
Hotel
There may be,
in
but I
Tower,
don't
Chicago.
recall.
And you didn't
Same
produce
answer.
that to me, did you?
With regards to
I
your
don't know
old
that
post
there
office
is or that
property,
there isn't.
is it correct that through the use
Your lawyer
of the
pulled it out of the
inflated
stack
statement
that
of
you gave
financial
him?
condition
Objection.
to obtain a favorable interest
And
rate,
why would
you
he
were
know
able
that?
to save at
So,
least
That's the
5%
point.
Next
Is
per
that he
question.
controlled
annum
the document
interest
structure, so he
payments
claims.
on the construction loan
You
of
don't
up
know
to
what was pulled out
$170
of
million
anything he gave
from
you,
Deutsche
or-
That
Bank.
assumes facts.
Same
Nothing
answer.
was pulled.
Is it
Go
correct
ahead.
that absent the
Ask a
$170
question.
million construction loan from Deutsche Bank,
doesn't assume
you would not have
facts, not
obtained the ground
evidence,
lease on the old post office property or been able to provide the renovation to the property that occurred?
Same answer.
You're saying, I think you've, Corsi, been deep state from the beginning. Your whole birther thing
next
is used to
question
destroy,
about,
is used as a club to destroy conservatives. You're tying him
apartments
to the deep
held by your
state
daughter at
and saying that he
502
wants to
Park
destroy
Avenue.
conservatives
I did say those
with the
things,
birther
yes.
thing.
Do you
I
know
did say
if
that.
the below market
That's
You're
rent
aware
right.
that Dr.
that she
Corsi's
had on
livelihood
her
is based
rental
upon
apartments at
his
502 Park
reputation
Avenue
and goodwill
were
with
provided in
conservatives,
exchange
correct?
for work performed?
I'm just
as
telling
part
you
of her
that was my
responsibilities
opinion,
at
which
the
I'm
Trump
entitled to. On the
Same
First
answer.
Amendment.
You're aware that
Do
he's
you know
a
if the
New York Times
below
best-selling
market
author.
As am I.
purchase
Correct?
option
I didn't ask you about
provided
you.
your daughter on
But I decided
502
to say
Park
it 'cause
Avenue
I get
apartments
to answer the
was
questions.
made in exchange for work performed as part of her
That
job
wasn't
at the
the
Trump
question.
Organization.
I am aware of that, yes. I've
Do you know
read
if the
his book
benefits
on
from
Kennedy's
any
assassination. It
below
tracked mine
market
almost
rents
exactly.
were
It was a good book.
reflected in any tax forms at the Trump Organization?
Same answer.
Do you think
Do you
the
know
CIA
if the
killed Kennedy?
value of any
I think
below
they were
market
among
purchase options
several
were reflected
institutions. I don't think it's
as
that
either
simple.
gifts or compensation
Organized crime
in
is
any tax
involved.
forms at the Trump Organization?
Same answer.
Big Texas Oil is involved. I think, as Dr.
go off the
Corsi
record.
does, Vice President Lyndon Johnson is
Back on the
involved.
record.
Motive, means, opportunity, eyewitness evidence, fingerprint evidence. Dr. Corsi's book and his research tracks mine pretty closely.
You may be pleased to know I actually agree with you on this issue.
Good.
But are you concerned with regard to President Trump?
As I was
right now
saying,
after
we are
hearing
back
the
on the
impeachment?
record to confirm that we have
regard to the
completed
CIA?
testimony
I
today.
pray
Thank you
for the
your time.
President's
Thank you.
safety every single day.
Thank you, everybody.
Off record.
Prayer has power.
Can we get back to the deposition?
3:13 p.m. and this concludes today's testimony given by Donald J. Trump. The court is.
The time is now near at hand, which must probably determine whether Americans are to be freemen or slaves, whether they are to have any property they can call their own, whether their houses and farms are to be pillaged and destroyed, and themselves consigned to a state of wretchedness from which no human efforts will deliver them. The fate of unborn millions will now depend, under God, on the courage and conduct of this army. Our cruel and unrelenting enemy leaves us only the choice of brave resistance or the most abject submission. We have therefore to resolve to conquer or die. General George Washington, addressed to the Continental Army before the Battle of Long Island, August 27, 1776. President Trump, we now face a moment of peril as great or greater as what General Washington and his men faced in 1776. The very survival of our nation as a free constitutional republic hangs in the balance. We have but one last chance to save it. The fate of unborn millions will now depend on your conduct, the conduct of the current members of our armed forces, and the conduct of we, the many millions of American veterans and patriots who are still loyal to our Constitution. When you were sworn in, you took the following oath as mandated by Article 2 of the Constitution. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. It's time to honor that oath by defending the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This is your moment of destiny. Will you take your place in history as the savior of our republic, right up there with President Washington and Lincoln? Or will you fail to act while you still can and leave office on January 20th, 2021, leaving we the people to fight a desperate revolution/civil war against an illegitimate usurper and his Xi puppet regime? Here are the facts. We are already at war with Communist China and its willing American agents, puppets, and co-conspirators who seek to overthrow our Constitution, as well as the international elites and other foreign enemies who have aided and abetted this war on our nation. They have infiltrated and taken over every branch of government at every level, state and federal. War isn't coming. War is already here. Communist China could never defeat us in open battle, so instead, it infiltrated and subverted our institutions, bought and blackmailed American elites, and made allegiance with willing domestic enemies of our Constitution to defeat us from the inside out without having to fire a shot by using what is commonly referred to as fourth-generation warfare doctrines and methods. This is war by other means, but it is war nonetheless. Through well-orchestrated mass vote fraud, the Communist Chinese and their domestic enemy allies are about to install their illegitimate puppet, Joe Biden, and his equally illegitimate puppet running mate, Kamala Harris, into the White House with their treasonous fingers on the nuclear launch codes. You must act now as a wartime president, pursuant to your oath to defend the Constitution, which is very similar to the oath all of us veterans swore. We are already in a fight. It's better to wage it with you as Commander-in-Chief than to have you comply with a fraudulent election, leave office, and leave the White House in the hands of illegitimate usurpers and Chinese puppets. Please don't do it. Do not concede, and do not wait until January 20th, 2021. Strike now. If you fail to act while you are still in office, we the people will have to fight a bloody civil war and revolution against these two illegitimate Communist China puppets and their illegitimate regime, with all of the powers of the deep state behind them, with nominal command of all the might of our armed forces, though we fully expect many units or entire branches to refuse their orders and to fight against them, and with their foreign allies also joining in to assist in the suppression of American patriots. Without clean elections, we no longer have a republic, and you are charged by the Constitution with preserving a republican form of government wherein the people actually elect their own representatives in clean elections. Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution clearly commands you in this when it states, "The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion." Shall is command language, and that command applies to all three branches of the federal government, including the executive branch which you run, and that command applies directly to you. You are commanded by the Constitution to take whatever action you must to ensure that we have a republican form of government, and that means clean elections. In the current dire circumstances where complicit traitors have been put into place in every branch of government, legislative, executive, judicial, at every level, local, state, federal, through fraudulent elections over many years, it means you will have to fix it, with the full support of loyal military service members and millions of military and police veterans, as well as millions of patriotic average Americans who stand with you 100% in doing what must be done. It won't be fixed by corrupted legislatures, governors, or the courts. The recent refusal by all but 2 of the Supreme Court justices, including all of your own Supreme Court picks, to hear the Texas election fraud case shows that the cancer of cowardice, compromised officials, and treason has spread even to the Supreme Court. The disclosures of the corruption and blackmailing of Hunter Biden and the corruption of Rep. Swalwell by a communist Chinese spy, as well as the blackmail ring run by Jeffrey Epstein, are the tip of the iceberg in how the deep state and its Xi allies have taken over our establishment elites. That corrupted establishment won't fix it, but we, the people, shall, one way or another, and we need you to lead us in this great battle to save our republic. Further, the U.S. Constitution states in Article I, Section 8, that Congress has the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Congress long ago provided for just that by passing the Insurrection Act, which delegates that decision and power to you as President and Commander-in-Chief. The Insurrection Act,
1217. This is a good time to do the control EEG, so we go next door. In less than 2 hours, LSD will reach its climax. In most subjects, the alpha index drops, and the frequency analyzer will show the gradual emergence of the fast frequency bands. Single light flash will block the alpha waves for at least twice as long a period as it does now. It will modify each time the visual illusions Bill is expected to see as he lies in a dark cage with his eyes closed.
We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania. And we're going to the Capitol. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country.
Whenever the President considers it necessary to use the militia or the armed forces under this chapter, he shall, by proclamation, immediately order the insurgents to disperse and retire.
I don't want to say that what we're doing is right. But if the election's being stolen, what is it going to take? Really? Is it going to take people just talking about it? You know, I'm probably going to lose my job as a pastor after this, but what is it going to take?
As Article 2 declares, the President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. You must call us up and command us. We urge you to do the following simultaneously as both the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the nation and as the Commander-in-Chief. Invoke the Insurrection Act. Issue a presidential proclamation directly invoking the Insurrection Act, declaring an insurrection, rebellion, and coup to be in effect by domestic enemies of the U.S. Constitution and traitors who are in collusion with. Can
I speak to Pelosi? Yeah, we're coming, bitch. Oh, my bitch. We're coming for you too, fucking traitor.
The U.S. military to suppress the insurrection. That proclamation should declare that domestic traitors have conspired with a foreign enemy, specifically Communist China, and have been either bribed or blackmailed by that enemy, and together they have subverted our electoral system from top to bottom to rig elections at every level, and to steal elections with the intent of overthrowing our Constitution and our way of life. A. Order the data seized. Pursuant to that proclamation, order SOCOM and other trusted military units to seize all databases of the CIA, FBI, NSA, DNI, etc., and the records held by all state electoral systems and administrators. And order them to take possession of and preserve all evidence of the insurrection/rebellion/coup, wherever it is housed or held, and to counter and suppress any attempt by the insurrectionists to prevent the seizing of the data.
So I may or may not have been in the Capitol and heard a bang, and someone came running out, and they had a picture on their phone. It was taken on their phone right there. They had it on their phone. It was right on their phone. It wasn't bullshit, bro. It sounded like a woman had gotten shot in the chest, and they say it's a rubber bullet, and they say it's in the neck. But I saw a bullet wound right here in the chest, and blood all behind her on the floor, and she was limp, and the cops were carrying her out, man.
Order a massive public WikiLeaks-style data dump with all the dirty
Tell me
when you're ready, sir. Those secrets are very small. DC small people swimming. Those dirty secrets both control and shield. Throw the doors open. Dump all the secrets behind onto the streets for all the people to see, and for all the world to see.
He's gone.
We're all clear now. Ask him to assist in this massive data dump public disclosure. He is a hero who has dedicated his life to battling the deep state and deserve our thanks for the chance to
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had a election, Lisa. I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Order them to report for duty at their nearest military base or National Guard armory in their state. All of the above, as the militia, can be used to keep the peace in our local and state communities under your direct command, to suppress the expected riots, terrorism, and armed insurrection by the radical left in the United States, who have been armed and equipped for months now by our foreign
E.g. abnormalities in a clinical sense are not expected. Now we'll go back to the other room. Before he sits down, he remarks that he begins to walk on air. Here and there, a forced, irrelevant giggle.
And we will not submit to a Shikam puppet regime.
How do you feel?
You must stand tall and use
Well, I
your
feel
power to
very
fight this war
fine.
against enemies foreign and domestic while you are still
I feel very buoyant and light and resilient. I feel as though this chair is not as solid as it seems to be. I have a feeling that my hands are not resting against this chair. And I see flashes of color quite a bit. I see this rug, for example, seems to have an awful lot of complements of violet and yellow. I see a lot of violets and yellow.
Do you know what the exact color of this rug
I
might
assume
be?
that it is gray.
You assume that it was gray?
Yes.
All right. Do you find any difference between one half of your body as opposed to the other half?
Well, I have a sort of a wavering tendency. I don't know which half is trying to get into the other half, but somehow or other, and I seem to be going like that.
One half.
It's a very pleasant feeling of nausea.